around the age of 10. My parents had a divorce.
My parents were around my age when they had me.
My father uttered some very negative words.
I'm still figuring out life now, talkless, having a child.
So I never had any positive things to reflect upon with my dad.
Fathers matter. Men matter.
Hello. Welcome back to Margaret Taribos Podcast. This is that platform where we look at our stories that will impact, we hope that will impact, that will transform, that will educate, that will build up trust, that will actually let people know that they're not alone. So today, I want to welcome back my team. We have Elio, we have Stephen, we have Caleb and Bellamy, and we're going to be looking at the topic, where is your father? Where is my father? And that's what we want to look at today. So we're going to kick off and start with Elio. This is a topic that it might be very, very deep, but we want you to flow along with us today. Thank you for bringing me back onto the podcast. But yeah, where is my father? God rest his soul, he's passed away now. He passed away when I was a teenager. But I grew up in a single parent family in the main. But when my father was present at that time, he was physically present, but as I've shared before, he was absent. He wasn't what I would call a benevolent individual. He'd give you things because he didn't want them. If he found that there was no use for them, then you could have it. But if there was, then you weren't getting it. And I remember that as an adult reflecting back, because growing up, I would say initially I did hate my dad. I felt quite strongly about the fact that I hated him. In fact, if you asked me about my dad, I would tell you that he's dead. But the way I would say he's dead, it would just hit you like a nuclear missile. And it was because I was conscious of the fact that he wasn't present. Anytime he tried to do or he had to do something, you could see it was begrudgingly doing so. And I remember that a time that he actually had to take me to school. And when he took me to school, that was the first time and the last time he ever took me to school. And I remembered I wanted to go into a sweet shop to get some sweets, which is what I would do with my mum. And the pinch that he gave me to get out of that shop, that time, to tell you my age, the sweets were like half a pence. And he just wouldn't be amenable to that. And then at that same time, there was the first time that I had ever been able to take the school register down to the school secretary, only to hear my father utter some very negative words. And well, I'll just say, he actually said that basically my mom was a prostitute and he used to take me and she used to take me and my sister out. So I never had any positive things to reflect upon with my dad. But as an adult, even before then, as a young teenager, when we were about to get to work, start working, I remember seeing my friends and their fathers, and they just had in my mind, a whale of a time. And that was because they were present there. And I remembered that there was a time where I was starting to look for work. And I was saying to my friend, listen, we've got these application forms. We have to fill them in. And her dad just scolded me. And I was so taken aback. And he was saying, anything that she needs, your friend needs, I can get that for her. She doesn't need to worry about work. And I remembered that and when I heard him say that, I wasn't angry at him. I just realized that my motivation for looking for that work and encouraging to do that work with me was because I was at a place of lack. that she didn't suffer from or experienced. I would have 50p pocket money, she's having £10. So there was a significant difference. But in my mind, I just saw, it's my friend, I'm doing this, I'm getting that. But it was a wake-up call for me. It made me realize that there is a significant difference between her and I. And as an adult, when I reflect back, my father and my mum came into the country in the 60s. No blacks, no dogs, no Irish. He had to retake all of his exams. He was he qualified. He had a law degree in Nigeria, but he had to retake everything again when he came here, bearing in mind it was supposed to be British education system. He had to redo everything. He was, as I understood then, the first black lecturer for South Bank University. So when I look back, I think, that whether he was conscious of the milestone he achieved, that was something I felt, I'm proud of you for that, because that would have taken a lot for you to have transitioned from that level of hatred to achieve those things. But as a father, he just was not present at all. Nothing. My mum was the one that was the breadwinner, that was bringing in everything. Even when he was working, it was his money. It wasn't their money. There was nothing he shared. And I can honestly say he didn't even, and he confessed that I wasn't a child that was liked.
Wow.
From what he had said.
Wow. Thank you for being real. Thank you for being real. That is powerful. Thank you so much. That is where your father was. I'm going to jump now because we're going somewhere with this conversation today. Can I go to you, Caleb? Where was Dad?
So, in my early years, I grew up with both my mum and my dad. My dad was present. Fortunately, around the age of 10, my parents had a divorce. So, it led from one thing to another, and then communication broke down. I didn't speak to my dad for years. Funny enough, rekindled with my dad last year.
Wow.
But for the last 15 years of my life,
wow,
I didn't have any communication with my dad. So I feel like within that time, to be honest, I didn't really care. I was able to adapt to it. It did affect me. It affected me a lot. But I feel like I learned to understand that this is how it is. And that's when I didn't really care or didn't think about it. Until I rekindled with him, I understood the importance of having a father, and in certain scenarios in life where that could have played a part or helped me. Not saying that my mum never did a great job, but how important it is that a father who's your own can make a great impact in your life. Even people that are not your father but still play that role makes an impact. But someone that little things like just identifying the similarities and understanding where that comes from and knowing how to work on yourself, or just understanding where you're coming from, or that person just letting you know that you can do this. You just need perseverance, or little conversations that I may have with him, and just, understanding that, even at my age, it's good to know that, you've got that power from that source, do you know what I mean? But, yeah.
Wow. So you said you reconnected back last year. How's that been?
It's been all right, better than I expected. I feel like in that process, it's kind of like you're both understanding how to communicate with each other. Nothing's really been said, but we're keeping it real, and I feel like I'm learning to be a son and he's learning to be a dad.
Wow.
And it's something that we haven't spoken with, but it's just like there might be times I may not pick a call because I'm living my life now, and it's like I've lived these years without him there, but it's me understanding that, cool, maybe I might not like a phone call, but call him back or check on him or be consistent to make sure that relationship lasts. And on his side, I know he's trying, but it's just like maybe you don't want to step on his toes. You understand that he's a big man. You may not want to overstep, and it's just being aware of all these things and giving people grace and understanding that cool, he wasn't around, but it's just like this is what he may have been feeling like. Cool, he might have been this and that, not justifying it, but it's just having that grace.
Exactly, not justifying it, but giving that grace. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being real.
Yeah.
And because I think what I'm getting from this is that the impact is there of the father not being there, but also the fact there might be reasons and there might be issues, but also the fact that there might be other people around you as well. Some of this, the impact might be positive, some of it not so positive, and I think that's what I'm getting so far from Bellamy. Where was that?
So I resonate a lot with all that's been said so far. Similar story to Caleb actually, but mum and dad separated when I was 7 or 8, and interestingly I reconnected and started rekindling a relationship with my dad last year or a year and a half ago as well. So it's that whole thing of learning, relearning, a lot of healing happening. It's just it's an interesting process.
Because he wasn't there.
But then it's also a thing of, I think what was said in a previous podcast episode, choices to break the cycle, choices to rewrite the narrative, choices in terms of how I want my future to be. And there were several things contributing to rekindling, but I think something you were mentioning about your dad passing away, and very my condolences.
Thank you.
It's a thing of interacting with different people who wish they could reconnect with their fathers, and I was just like, wait, mine is still alive. And having to, there have been waves of forgiveness over the years, but then it was a new level of forgiveness. I'm a Christian. It was a new level of forgiveness that God was calling me into. A new level of healing, a new level of humility, and also a humility in terms of understanding him. And I think a lot of things that were running through my mind were, okay, my parents were, when I was reconnecting, my parents were around my age when they had me. Right? And I'm still figuring out life now, having a child, being in a new country, all of that. So I think it's just that phase of adulthood and making decision in terms of my own healing journey and addressing things, and the narrative I want to build going forward, and having that opportunity to, I'm seeing a lot of having a lot of the opportunity to reconnect with him, the importance of fathers, the importance of their presence, the importance of also extending that grace for his own healing, and also accepting the choices he's made, but then also thinking, okay, how can we move forward? There have been years lost, but then it's like, okay, what new relationship can we build going forward?
And being aware that it's not always going to be where people are different, because some people you might extend grace, but they don't know how to take it. It might be through guilt. It might be through they just don't know how. But it's about being aware of that, because sometimes when we reconnect, it's like, okay, this is the expectation, but what if they fail again? And all that trauma, it comes up. So it's a deep issue we're looking at, and that's why we're taking our time to think about, yes, where are our fathers? Do they need to be there? Who else can be there? And what can we do to make it better? So I'm now going to hand over to Stephen.
This is a very huge thing. I mean, obviously, because I am a father, and been through the mill of being fathered. Interestingly, my father was available, but I really do go down your path. Being there, there's a difference between being there. That's what you're alluding to, in terms of being present, but actually being present. To be able to do things with your father, to be able to have your father next to you, to give you instruction, to guide you, to correct you with love. And I think these are the things that became special to me. Now, like I said, I grew up with my father. But then I say that and I think, did I? Because when my parents came here, like yours, they came to study. So for the first parts of my life, I was with foster carers all over the place. And so I have this conversation with my wife that I do not remember my first 5 years, even till now. Okay. And that's me saying my father was there, but see? So when I eventually came home, all I knew my father to do was work. Now, to provide, which is what is expected. That's the perceived notion, that is to provide. But growing up in this country and then growing up in Nigeria and not actually having my father to play with, I remember the only time that I actually played, or a form of play at the time, was when I held onto my dad's neck and he tickled me. That's the only time that I actually remember.
And that was memorable because you can remember something
distinctly. And the other thing that I remember is growing a bit older, I was in the Scouts, again in this country, but me changing the car tire with my dad. That was like, yes, that is part of what a young boy would like to have. So those were the things that made it like, yes, I love these thoughts. And even in Nigeria, where I learned to drive, I didn't ask my dad to teach me how to drive, but he taught me how to drive. So those little things were the special things that said, this is my dad's role to me, as opposed to providing the funds, and those to me come as standard. But the one thing that I now know that I missed, because he's also passed, I was just thinking about it yesterday, 15 years ago. One thing that I missed, that I think we are all now beginning to discover, is the emotional attachment. And that emotional attachment and the lack thereof and the impact of that. And the perceived notion of us as within our community that because you're showing emotion, you're showing weakness. And so that's why I've now come as a father who has fathered 3 adult daughters. My daughters are now adults, and thinking about how I did that at the beginning, the mistakes that I've made that have put me in a position where I'm now thinking that, no, fathers, we got to change how we're doing stuff. To speak to dads and say, listen, we can do better. We must do better, because we, fathers, are the foundation on which society builds. And again, because I'm a Christian, I have a very strong belief that if the foundation is shaky, everything else is shaky. So if you, and I do this with a perspective that my program is called Father In. And it's not the action, it's the inside. Addressing the inside of us, the inside of me as a father, as a man. How do I resolve things within myself with God? And then, therefore, how do I affect my family? Which is the most important thing to start off with. Because if I'm not good for me, how can I be good for you, who is my wife and who is my daughter? So these are things that now drive me to address the elephant in the room. Like you said there, to know that he's there. Your dad being your dad, as opposed to, and then also a man filling in for that role where they can. I know everybody has said something here that just makes so much sense, that the role, the responsibility, the authority of the male man in a child's life cannot be overemphasized.
And I really agree, because I'm very passionate about that. But even if the dad is not there himself, there needs to be, and we can't displace the men. I think unfortunately society is displacing male figures.
Really much so. Really
and I might be sounding political, but I think it's something we really need to address. How can we encourage the men, the male figures, the male to take their roles, to take their place, and not displace them. I think we had this conversation about feminism and everything like that. No, but men will always be men, and we really need to think about that.
I feel great things like what Stephen's doing with the program you've got on. First of all, was creating a safe space for men, because I feel like I was at a wedding yesterday, and he asked the groom to help the wife, and he jokingly said, your wife is going to get help, but men, you're never going to get help. You're going to have to help yourself back up. And that's the reality that men go through. So just that, what you touched on, having to come to another country, do everything you did before in your country, then do it back here, then deal with your family, deal with other family. There's so much, and this is just not about that, but just in general, these are just the pressures they have, and there's nowhere else to release it. So it's that safe space, it's that communication, and it's also,
and that's cultural. There's a cultural element as well, because the expectations that they have from fathers of men, that you need to be a man now, and what you're doing and things like that.
So it's just emotionless, and it's what they transfer into every part of their relationship, where they feel because they're doing something, it feels like it covers everything else. But the emotion where you need to be present, or the wife might need that a bit of affection, or just being a leader in your community, because, those things are very impactful. Because that's missing out, this is the reason. And it's, like I said, just creating that space for men, and letting them understand that it's okay.
Yes. It's okay not to be okay. I think,
That's very much what I'm driving at right now, that we're creating a community where men will come and have a heart-to-heart and know that, yes, you can be heard, you are heard, and that you do matter, and that your impact is very important. I was watching a clip the other day, and maybe some of you have seen it, where the family are sitting at the table, and the little toddler gets up and climbs on the table, and the mother says, come off the table, and he says, no, get off the table, no, and if you don't come off the table, you're going to get a smack, and he's smiling it, and all you hear in the background is, get off the table now, and the boy crying sits down. So it's just simple little things like that being present, and that voice is so impactful. And understand that we are a voice. We are a voice that is so important, and not to just succumb.
I like that word. Succumb to the narrative
that the world is telling us.
I've had to be in programs for men, and one of the things that came up at time, I was doing a program called on assertiveness for fathers, and some of the fathers opened up to me to say, even social services, because they're being judged already, and the way the mother of their children present them, and so they want to be involved in their child's life, but then being denied that right for one reason or the other. I want to be in my child's life, but they're being denied that. So what do you say? And then meanwhile, that child doesn't know that, they're going to be hearing that, where's your dad? Your dad does not, they don't, and these are the things that come up all the time.
I feel like in those situations, like I always say to them, the truth will always come out. And I feel like when you're a real father and a real man that stands on principles, and you're put in situations like that, there's going to be a time where things will work out for you.
men
But-
crying, you know. I
Yeah.
felt so bad, and I said, you can't give in, you can't give up. And you can see them broken because they're not getting this. They will have to appear before social care, but because they go there and they're being judged already, so they don't even want to talk. So
I mean, me personally, I think the system has and is deliberately set up to destroy the foundation of families. Do you understand? And this is outside of the fact that the relationship is not working. There is nothing that really supports, even within the legal system. If there's an issue of custody, it's always the woman that will fare better than the man when it comes to having the children. And so when you're constantly having that narrative that you have to keep going upstream with, then it takes away from your energy. I mean, I have a friend right now that had a child and has gone from pillar to post through the legal system in order to gain just equal access for his daughter, and cannot even get a word in edgeways. And despite character witnesses coming forward, etc., they've made up their mind, and I'm thinking to myself, who are you? Why would you make that judgment? For me, I've even said to my clients, if you can co-parent for the sake of your child, then do that, because your breaking up wasn't the child, it was about yourselves. Do you understand what I'm saying? But it's almost like that wind that they need to fly that sail is taken away from them. And for me, a man should never, ever, 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 I repeat, ever be excluded from his child's life, except he's threatening the child's life. But if it's not, then that child has a right to see the child and the father. And it's their choice to decide if they don't want to see the father, not because you've fed all this negative narrative to them,
I think I agree. So we're going to. I think in fact, it's for me. It's a bit emotional because I know what it is like. Just like your stories as well, having a father that. But I look at things more spiritually, really, in terms of the fact that my father, he wanted to, but he couldn't in some ways. Mm-hmm. And that made us not happy as children. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's so many things we could go into. But I think the narrative right now is the fact that fathers need to be there. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have fathers there, the male figure needs to be there. It's important. And we need to be listening a bit more to what the children have to say as well. Yeah. And I think that's important. Yeah. Any last comments before we round this segment off?
I personally, and talking from experience, I also echo what Pastor Stephen says, that there needs to be a clarion call for fathers to step up, because the paradigm shift that happens consciously and unconsciously because they're absent draws from a female perspective it draws you to look for attention. And I'm not talking about sexual attention. I'm talking about attention from others to be that father figure that actually you're supposed to be. Do you understand? And when when those coordinates are put in the sat nav, metaphorically speaking, there is no control of that if you're not spiritually aware or conscious that that is where you're going and that's what you're doing. Because I knew that I've adopted many people as fathers because I didn't have a father. And so I would say to all fathers, irrespective, if you can move and be there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Caleb?
I will say from the child's perspective, just like he said, I'm also a Christian as well. It took me a lot of strength, forgiveness, healing, in order to make that first step.
So you made the first step.
To be fair, it was actually my mum. So I spoke. Funny enough, so something happened where one of my close friends' fathers passed, and just the same thing you're saying in terms of like, you know what? Let me make things all right before that ever happens. So I had that conversation, and then funny enough, when I got home, she actually spoke to one of my uncles that's friends with my dad to kind of sort out the situation what's going on. So yeah, it was, regardless of the situation being done by my mum, I chose to take it ahead because I could have said no, I don't need to. But I had to swallow my pride. I had to forgive him. I had to, get rid of not get rid of the hurt, but forgive him for the hurt that he may have done unknowingly or knowingly, because there's two sides to the story. And it was just, because one day I'm going to be a father, and you understand and you start to see that certain pains and certain grudges that you hold on to stop you from moving forward in life. So as I'm growing into a man, there's just certain things I want to deal with in my past that set me free. You know what I mean? And yeah, I just feel like any young person that may feel like I'm never going to chat to my dad because I used to be like that. I don't need them. You need them because they're a human being as well. And sometimes you might be the bigger person. There's certain things that you've learned that they will learn from you. So there's going to be a time you stop being the child
and you become,
and you actually start showing your parents, okay, you can do it this way, and they will learn from you, but they won't say anything.
Exactly. They don't have to say it.
They're not going to say it, but they will learn.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for. Thank you so much for. Yeah, that's so good. Bellamy, last thoughts.
Healing goes both ways. Healing goes both ways.
Healing goes both ways. It's a bit emotional, and I want to give Stephen the last word to say on this. But it is intense, and we've opened up a lot of things this evening, and I want us to be aware of that because it's something deep, and if you're watching, it is something deep. Stephen?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to everybody that's listening and watching, just think of what you've heard tonight, what you've looked at today. Look at the expressions in the room. I think this has been the most sullen podcast we've had.
Yes.
So it does go deep. It goes deep for me as an older man that I am. I'm actually getting pretty emotional right now because I know the pain that this has left, the pain that it creates, and I don't want it. I don't want it for you, our children. I don't want it to carry on like this. So, guys, men, you've heard what these young people have said. You've heard what we've all said here. Let's reach out. Let's reach out knowing that, the cliched statement, you matter. Fathers matter. Men matter.
Yes, and we can't say that enough. We have to keep on saying it. And I just want to leave us with this. You might feel you don't have that confidence. You might feel like giving up. You're not being heard. The system is hitting out against you. But believe me, there are people out there. There are organizations out there. If you want to talk, they are there. So please reach out and don't give up because, like Stephen said, and we're all saying it, you matter. We are saying it together. You matter. Thank you for watching this episode of Margaret Taribos Podcast. See you next time.